I just crocheted this awesome blanket and I filmed the entire process so you guys can also learn how to make your own oversized granny square blanket. But beware, this is not a typical crochet tutorial. This might possibly be the worst crochet tutorial you've ever seen on YouTube, but all the steps are there and you're gonna come along with me and see what I did over the entire last month, because it took 1 month and 1 day to crochet this blanket. And I filmed everything to show you guys. So come on! I have $60 worth of yarn here today, and I'm gonna roll it all up into balls. But I have a funny story to tell about how I bought this yarn. So I always plan my projects out in advance, and this blanket was no exception. I wanted to get a bunch of neutral tone colors of yarn, and I wanted to have as much variance as I could, but still be within neutral, kind of bland, boring colors, because the couple who I'm making this as a gift for, they're kind of stock photo people. They're kind of bland and boring, and I feel like if I'm gonna make them anything, it really kind of needs to be as bland and boring as they are. So I went to go pick out all my yarn colors online so that I knew if I was gonna go to a store that I would get the colors that I needed. And I looked at a few different places. I looked at Craigslist, which just didn't have anything good enough. I looked at Facebook Marketplace, and I was going to buy something online, but my card immediately got declined, and it is a good card. I actually used it to buy this yarn, so I think I probably gave my credit card information to some random scam artist on Facebook Marketplace, so that was kind of stupid of me. But I also looked at Joann, which is like over an hour away from my house, and I wanted to get the yarn after work, so I decided not to go to Joann, and I went to Walmart instead, because this is not sponsored, but you can go online on the Walmart app and see what's in store. And so I was able to, on my lunch break yesterday, pick out all the yarn colors that I wanted to use for my blanket. And I was able to find like a bunch of these colors. Like I ended up with 4 different shades of brown, a cream color, 2 different grays. Like I got a bunch of good neutral colors there, and I was able to know I could get good neutral colors because I picked it out in advance. And so I drink a lot of water. When I drink a lot of water at work, I mean, I drink like 5 to 6 bottles of water every single day at work. And this is for health reasons. I have low blood pressure. And this causes me to have to pee a lot throughout the day. And normally, when I'm at work, I just go to the bathroom and, then I'm good. But I, in all my great wisdom, decided I was going to drink my entire last bottle of water yesterday, about 10 minutes before I had to leave. And since I was focused on drinking my last bottle of water, when the time came after planning to use the bathroom before going to Walmart after work, I entirely forgot that I already had to pee before I walked out the door, set the alarm, locked it, and got in my car. I didn't remember that I had to pee until I got into my car and was about to drive away. And I thought, I can hold it. I thought I'll be fine. I got a strong bladder. I'm used to trying to hold it. I'll be all right. So I went and got gas. I was still okay. Got in my car. I was still okay. Driving to Walmart, which is a half hour away from where I live, from where I work. Usually it takes a half hour to 45 minutes. And I was on the way and I was driving and I was okay. was like, you know, I gotta pee, but it's not uncomfortable yet. It's all right. I can hold it. Got to Walmart, no problems. Got gas, no problems. Got in the store, and I looked left. Saw the restroom sign. Thought I could use the bathroom here. But no, I hate using public bathrooms. I'm not gonna use that bathroom. Went all the way to the back of the store. Because for those of you who aren't crafty people, all the art supplies and craft supplies is all the way in the back of the store where nobody goes. It's like between the electronics and the toys, or some, you know, some area like that nobody's like planning to go into this area specifically. They're going to all the adjacent ones. And you've probably walked past the yarn aisle a million times and never realized how much yarn they actually have at Walmart. But I have to say, again, this is not a sponsored video, but they had a great selection and they had some pretty good prices. Like, I was able to, instead of just getting the Red Heart Jumbo Super Saver, which is normally what I go for, I realized that Walmart has their own brand, which has just as much yardage in it, but is like $2 less. So I got a mix. I got a mix of both just so I could get more colors, because I like to have more colors. So I was on the little aisle for the yarn, and since I had picked out what I wanted before I got to the store, I just had to look for each yarn color that I wanted, and I picked stuff out pretty quickly. And by this point I had to pee. Like, full on, I had to pee at this point. And I got all the yarn in my cart, and that was pretty easy. And then, of course, like, as I was going to the register, I passed the fabric section, and I got distracted by the fabric. And I really had to exert my willpower in not purchasing any fabric yesterday, because I was not there for fabric. I was there for yarn so I can make a blanket as a wedding gift for a wedding that I'm going to, like, in a month. And so I was like, I am not buying fabric today. And I didn't. I was good. I had the willpower. And so I went up to self-checkout, which I hate doing self-checkout. I actually really hate going into stores. I normally do curbside pickup, but I couldn't do curbside pickup because I couldn't get this yarn in store, even though they had it. I could only get this one shipped. So I had to go in the store to get all my fabric. That's the only reason I went in the store rather than doing curbside pickup. And I found that out on my lunch break. So I went up to self-checkout, and I am an awesome cashier. Like, I really did well as a cashier when I worked at Target way, way long ago. Terrible job, I hated it, but I was a good cashier. So I just swooped in, there was no line, checked out all my yarn, put it in 3 bags, and just booked it out of the store. Like, ran through the parking lot almost to my car. I threw the bags in my car, cut off some girl at the cart corral to try and get my cart in there first so she wouldn't hold me up. And I got into my car. And at this point, I get off work at 5. I was out of Walmart at 5:49. And I thought, I really gotta pee at this point. But I can hold it. I'll be fine. I'll be alright. I can hold this pee the entire, what is it gonna be, 30, 40 minutes home? And when I tell you, that was the next 26 minutes were the most agonizingly painful potty dance I have ever done. Because about 10 minutes up the mountain, I started to get hot. Now, if you've ever had to pee so much, you started to sweat. You started to get nauseous. This is well past bladders hurting at this point. Like, this is physical pain at this point. And I was like, looking at the bushes on the side of the road like I could stop and piss in those bushes. But I can hold it. I can hold it. I have willpower. So I kept going up the mountain. I got off the exit. I made good time to that exit. Now the exit is where it really starts to have problems because we got hills and we got old people. And luckily I did not get stuck behind any old people yesterday. And I only had to sit at the one light for like a minute. It's an excruciating minute, but I only had to sit at the light for about a minute. And then rounded the driveway. I got home. I opened the garage door. On my way down the driveway, I opened the garage door. And I rounded into the garage. And I didn't even wait for the door to open all the way. Like, I almost crashed my car into the garage door as it was lifting. And I threw my car in park, opened the door, left my keys, my purse, everything in the car, left the door open. And as soon as I got out of the car, I felt a trickle. So I squatted down. Little T-Rex arms. I waddled into the house. My husband's looking at me like, what's going on? I was like, I gotta pee. And I couldn't go to the bathroom because our house got flooded about 2 years ago, and it still hasn't been fixed. Hopefully it will be fixed next week. They're gonna be fixing it. But we don't have the downstairs bathroom right now because our house hasn't been fixed. So once I got into the house, I had to goblin run all in a squat position with a little bit of pee trickling out through the mudroom, through the den, through the kitchen, down the hallway, all the way up the stairs, down the hallway upstairs, before I could even reach a bathroom. Once I got in the bathroom, I had to walk past that double vanity. I had to walk past the tub and walk all the way to the wall to get to the bathroom, to get to the toilet. And I sat down. My cat comes up the stairs and he's like, Mom! What are you doing? And you know what? It would have been so much better. I wouldn't have had to deal with any of that pain if I had just gone to the bathroom before I left work. Or if I would have just gone to the bathroom at Walmart rather than, you know, my fear of public toilets. It really isn't anybody's fault but my own. But I got a good deal on yarn. All this yarn cost $60 and I got 4 shades of brown, I got a shade of cream, and I got 2 grays. So I'm pretty happy with the selection I have. And I think this is gonna really make a really cool blanket. So I'm just rolling all of these skeins into balls And then I can start crocheting my granny squares from there. Can you not? Buddy. Buddy Kojo. I know you can't handle it, but do. Why? Kojo. Bubby. Baby dude. Dude, go away. Kojo, stop it. You're gonna get it, Kojo? You're adorable. Now that my yarn is all rolled into balls, it's time to start crocheting my granny square blanket. This is also where I confess that I don't know how to crochet. I tried to learn from a book a long time ago and it just didn't make sense to me. It didn't work with my brain. Like, I didn't like all the acronyms and stuff. And then nobody in my family would teach me. So I had to learn to do it myself. I had to figure out how to crochet myself. So I just like took a hook and started going one day. So when I wanted to learn how to make a granny square for this project, I had to reverse engineer a granny square from images I found of granny squares online. And I learned how to make a regular granny square, but I also learned how to make an oversized single color granny square, which I think will be perfect for the blanket I'm trying to crochet today. So I don't know how to teach you the proper methods of crocheting a granny square, but I will at least show you how I am making my granny squares. And well, I don't care what size crochet hook I use as long as it's comfortable. If you guys are interested, this 6.5 millimeter hook is the one I'm going to be using today. I'm just using my favorite crochet hook. It's purple, so it's cute, but it's also really comfortable to use, and I like the shape at the top. It just feeds through the yarn really nicely. And this yarn is all standard worsted weight yarn, if you care about that. To make my oversized granny squares, I start with a slip knot in the center. I start by making a slip knot in the center, put my crochet hook through that, and chain 2 stitches on to my hook. Then I wrap my yarn around my hook. Insert the hook into the slip knot with the yarn tail still on it. Hook the yarn and then pull that piece of yarn through the slip knot. I hook the yarn again and then pull it through the first 2 stitches on the hook. I hook the yarn again and pull it through the last 2 stitches on the hook. And then I repeat that one more time. Then I pull my yarn through my loop to chain 3 stitches, or as I call them, 3 spaces. Now we're gonna make 4 of these stitch clusters around this slip knot in the center. So we're gonna loop the yarn, go back through that slip knot. Again, we're gonna pull the yarn through, feed it then through 2 stitches at a time. That's 1. We're gonna do 2 more. So I guess this is 2. and then 3 stitches all together in the cluster, and then we're gonna chain 3 more times. So 1, 2, 3. And we'll do that twice more so that we have 4 clusters all together. So we have 4 clusters, and on the last cluster I chain 2 and then hook into the next stitch. I then chain 2 again and flip my piece so I can easily work in the other direction. Now this chained piece counts as the first stitch in our cluster of 3 going forward for the rest of the granny square. So I'm gonna make 2 stitches . And then I'm going to chain 3. Now since this is a corner, we're going to pivot and then chain the next cluster into that same space we just crocheted the last cluster into. Now going across the top from one space to another, we're going to chain 1 and then make another cluster of 3 stitches. Since this is a corner, we're gonna chain 3 and then make another 3 stitches off that space. Now we'll repeat that for the rest of this row. 3 stitches on the corner, 3 spaces, and then 3 stitches on that corner. For each corner to have 2 clusters of stitches, with 1 space going between each cluster on the straight edges. Now when I come back around and get to that first stitch in the round, I don't make a chain. I just loop right into that original stitch. Now again on the 3rd row, we're gonna chain 2 and flip the piece to the back side, then make 2 stitches into the space we are on top of. One space to the corner. Again, it's going to be a cluster of 3 stitches, 3 spaces, and 3 stitches on every corner forever. And when you get back to the beginning of the round, insert your hook into the beginning of that round, hook it, and then chain 2 and flip to the back side. Start your next round by stitching into the gap you are on until you have a 10 by 10 granny square. Now I mean 10 by, you have 10 clusters of stitches. Also, if you count from the center, you will have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 rows or rounds all together. Now, it takes me about an hour to make an entire giant granny square, and I have like 6, maybe 7 balls of yarn here, so this is gonna take a while, and I'm just gonna jump right into it. So I have a wedding to go to. It's a little over a month, but less than 2 months away. And money is kind of tight right now. So I thought, well, these people are stupid, filthy, loaded rich. They're extended family and they have a lot more money than we do. And I honestly cannot afford a nice gift for these people. So I thought, well, what if I make something? Because I know I can spend less money on materials and make something a lot nicer than what I would be able to afford to buy them for a wedding gift. And then I thought, well, you know, these people are very, they're a lot more normal than me, they're a lot more trendy than me, and I know crochet has been popular the last few years, but also since Taylor Swift wore a crochet granny stitch dress, the whole granny stitch thing has been really popular right now. So I thought, well, I could make a granny square blanket. That would be like a nice wedding gift. They could have that in their home, they could share it together, and there's a lot of different ways I could make it, a lot of different design options, a lot of different colors I could choose. So when I thought about the colors, I immediately thought they're very like stock photo people. Like I haven't been over to their house, the couple that's getting married, but I've been to their parents' house. I've been to his grandma's house as well. So their design aspect is very, or aesthetic is very hotel lobby. Which is nice, it's pleasant to be in. Not my style at all though. So I thought, like, what would look good in his dad's house? And I thought, well, neutral colors, like that would look good. That wouldn't stand out too much. That would be aesthetically appealing. It would go with their whole stock photo vibe. It wouldn't stand out to the point where they would be like, oh, this is hideous. I don't like hot pink. I don't like orange. Throw it away. Like a neutral color would be something that they would use. So, like I said before, I try to make gifts for people using colors that they would like, but also colors that I would not like. So I won't be tempted to keep it because I'm going to spend a lot of time on this blanket, crocheting this blanket for them. And I don't want to be tempted to keep it when I'm done. So I went with a neutral color palette. And then I looked at these granny squares and I thought initially when I was mocking these up that these kind of take a while to do because there's a lot of ends that need to be woven in, but there's also a lot of color switching which takes time. And so I thought, what if I do a solid color granny square instead? And I looked up and I saw a few patterns for it. I saw that that's something people do. And then I saw these really big oversized granny squares on Etsy. It would be like, you know, a big white one in the middle with like a bigger row of green and then a bigger row of yellow and then a bigger row of the white again. Like it was a big single square granny square and they were large and I thought that looks easy. I could do that. And then I thought about it more and I was like, I don't think that's their aesthetic. I don't think one giant granny square, like we're talking, like this would be the center and then the whole blanket would be like 5 by 5 feet giant granny square. I was thinking that's not them. I don't think it would be good for their aesthetic. But I thought, what if I make giant granny squares in a bunch of neutral tones and then piece them together to make a blanket? And like that clicked in my head. Like I thought that would be a good idea. I thought that maybe if I made that for them, they would like it. So here's to hoping that they're gonna like the design. I also have a time limit here. Like the wedding is a little over a month away. So I want to have this blanket done in a month, even though I've never made a blanket before. I've quilted. I've never crocheted a blanket before. I've never crocheted a project that's big. So I don't know how long it will take me to do. And I normally take a month to make a much smaller project. So I wanted to go simple on the granny square block because it will be easier and quicker for me to make a larger blanket. Now, these people that I'm making it for, the couple I'm making it for, I think they are the kind of people who would care more about a larger blanket than an intricate blanket. Like if I made a granny square blanket for my grandmother who, passed away about a year ago. If I made one for her, she would totally appreciate all the effort it takes to make a traditional granny square because she crochets too. She knows the work that goes into it. And if I made her a big granny square like this, she would look at that and be like, oh, well, you put less effort into that because you used one solid color. That's a shortcut, Christine. She would know that. She would say that. But the people I'm making this for, they don't, as far as I know, they don't have any hobbies, so they wouldn't care. They don't know the effort that goes into it. And frankly, I don't think they will appreciate that I am making something at all. I don't think that's even gonna factor into how much they will like or dislike this gift, because that's just the kind of people they are. And some people are like that, and that's fine. The world needs people like that. And sometimes you need somebody to gift something like that to. Sometimes you need a simpler project to give to simpler people. And I think they would care much more about how big the blanket is than how intricate it is. So I'm gonna try and make a big blanket for them because I feel like that would come across better. If you make a blanket that is just not the colors somebody would like, and so they never use it, or they gift it away, or they sell it, or take it to Goodwill, like if you make a blanket without consulting somebody, and I haven't consulted the couple on what I'm making here because frankly we don't talk a whole lot. Like they're part of the extended family. We don't have a lot of communication. But we are invited to the wedding and I want to go and I want to have a decent gift for them. But if you make a gift for somebody without consulting them about the colors and the pattern, the template, then you can easily make something that they would not like. And I don't want that to happen here. Like if they threw out the blanket or gave it to Goodwill, I could see that happening. But I would be a little upset if they did. Like I would rather they use the blanket, or I'd rather they just put it somewhere and not even think about it. Like I want this to just be a neutral, unassuming blanket that they can just leave anywhere. And maybe when they use it, they don't even think about me because it doesn't register in their brain that it came from me, because it's not weird and quirky like me, it's neutral like them. So that's kind of my goal for this, is to make an unassuming blanket. Something that I think would fit in with their aesthetic and that they would be comfortable using. And I don't want to make something that they would just dislike or throw away. So that's what went into my design for this, and ultimately what went into making the big granny square and the whole idea behind it. And not for nothing, I like the giant granny square myself. There's a simplicity to it that I think is really striking. I think I'm gonna really like this when it's done. Not enough to keep it, but I think I'm still gonna aesthetically like the look of it. And I think taking a step back and trying to make something simple for this project is gonna be good for me. I think it's gonna be a good challenge for me. I'm on row 6. So I will catch up with you later when I know how many of these granny squares I can make with one ball of yarn. I've been using my crochet bag for this project. I've ultimately determined that I can make more granny squares than I need out of this yarn. I can make 7 granny squares and still have some left over, which is plenty for me. I was originally thinking, since I have 7 different colors of yarn, that if I could make a 7 by 7 grid with my granny squares, that would be perfect. So I'm gonna shoot for that, and then if I need to make more granny squares when I'm done, if I have time, I'll have more yarn to do that with. I need to count how many I have. 2, 3, 4, 5. So now I have 7 cream colored squares and 5 brown squares, so I need to make at least 2 brown squares today, and then if I have time, I'm gonna start on the gray. Yeah, I've been doing pretty well so far with stitching these granny squares together. I have 10 already within a week, and I think that's a pretty good pace considering I'm gonna need about 50, and that means if I do 10 a week and I need about 50, I'll be able to get them all done in a little over a month, which I said I have a little over a month to do the blanket, so I'm on track. I'm on track to get everything done. And I haven't been making a lot of mistakes while doing this, which is good, because when you make a mistake, you have to unravel a bunch of yarn and then redo it, and it just takes time and it's a pain and it's frustrating. And I did make one mistake last night. I was on the 9th row, and I went the entire row, came back around, and realized I had missed like 2 stitches at the very beginning of the row. So I had to unravel the entire row, and that was a pain. That was frustrating. But I managed to do it, and I caught the mistake before, you know, the whole square was ruined, and it turned out all right. But there are some times, like, I try to not make mistakes as much as possible, and then I try to fix. Hey, good job. And making mistakes is something that I try to avoid as much as possible, but there are some times when I try to let a mistake go, and that was one that I struggled with because it ruined good job. Really? Man, buddy, I loved you. You don't have to come in and start making noise. You're gonna be loved either way. Yeah, you're a good cat and I love you. You're a sweetheart. But mistakes are something that I've really been trying to work on lately, because it used to be that I would avoid making mistakes at all costs. Like, I was a super perfectionist for a very long time, and anytime I made a mistake, it was like the end of the world. And so I learned a lot about how to fix mistakes and how to go back and, you know, tear something apart and redo it entirely, or how to roll with it and make it look better, like turn a mistake into something that looks intentional. And I've been really trying to just accept a mistake for what it is and then move on with it and, you know, like finish the project without being so like anally perfectionist with it. And that's something that I've kind of struggled with like my whole life. And in this case, I had to go back and fix the whole thing because it like misshaped the square and it wasn't gonna look right without it. But I'm trying not to be so perfect in general. Like, I'm not trying to be a perfectionist with my stitches. If the square is like imperfect tension, like if it's not, like if I don't have perfect tension, that's okay. I'm not trying to make every single granny square in this blanket absolutely perfect. As long as the stitches are there, I don't care how good the stitches look. But obviously, like I said, if I miss a stitch, I'm gonna have to go back and fix it. But overall, I'm trying to go for a finished blanket here. And that's, oh, I think it's a Bonnie Hunter quote. It was like, done is better than perfect. And it was a picture of a quilt where one block was like rotated and it was like super obvious. So I'm trying to channel that energy with this blanket. Done is better than perfect. I'm not gonna get hung up on my mistakes. I'm not gonna go back and try to fix them if they're not super important to the functionality of the blanket. And I'm just gonna be happy with it because ultimately, this is not my blanket. Once this blanket is done and I gift it to the recipients at the wedding, I'm never gonna see this blanket again. So I just need to detach myself from it. I need to not put my emotions and my soul into this blanket. This is just a project. This is one single project in the grand scheme of my life that is ultimately not that important, and nobody's gonna care if it's not perfect. Hi, my name's Christine and I am a recovering perfectionist. And for this blanket, I'm going to allow myself to make mistakes. While I was telling you guys that I was just gonna accept the mistakes I made a really big mistake. I skipped a whole cluster. And so now I have one side that has 9 stitches on it, clusters of stitches, and the other sides all have 10. And I don't know, is that functionally gonna be a problem? Does it look that bad? I don't know. So I'm just gonna keep this. I'm gonna try and live with the mistake. I'm gonna keep this the way it is and tie it off, and then when I get to the end of the blanket, if I have time to make a new one of these, I'll make a new one and swap this out. But it's so early on. This was like the 4th row, the 3rd or 4th row. I don't want to undo all those stitches. So this brown yarn is cursed. I keep skipping stitches with it, but I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna do what I said. I'm gonna not be a perfectionist with it, and I'm gonna maybe just do this and then put it on like the edge of the blanket where nobody will see it. It's such a good kitty cat. Yeah. I thought the dude. I love you so much. You're such a good boy. Little loving cat. No, you're so flippy. You're so cute. You flippy floppy Kojo. You're so stretchy and long. You're adorable. That's a Kojo. Can you get your claws out of that? Thank you. Buddy. I placed the gimpy granny square on the top of my brown stack so I would know to place that one on the very edge of the blanket. And then I grabbed the gray yarn, which is probably my favorite color out of all the yarn I have. So I have been timing myself to see how long it takes to actually make one of these giant oversized granny squares, and start to finish it takes between an hour and 10 minutes and an hour and 20 minutes. So just under a half hour or just over an hour. I haven't been able to break an hour, and I don't think any of them have taken over an hour and a half except for the ones I was like trying to show you guys. We take, you know, an hour and a quarter times like 50, because I'm gonna have to make like 50 of these granny squares. That's like, what is it, 60, 70 hours that I'm gonna be crocheting these granny squares, not counting like joining them all together at the end, and not counting the extra time it takes to film this. And like, that's a lot more time than I was originally thinking it would take. But I think I can manage that in a month. But realistically, this is the first month I've actually had the time to maybe spend this much time working on this blanket because we've had a few major stressors that we've been able to get out of the way. And financially, we're in a better spot than we were a few months ago, a few years ago even. We're in a better spot with a lot of things, and I'm a lot less stressed, and I have a lot more stress relieved free time that I can use to focus on a big project. So it's really good that I do have the time to actually work on this since it's gonna take a bunch of time, but also that like I'm in a better mood and I'm in a better headspace. And you know, crocheting is actually a really like meditative hobby for me. I don't crochet a whole lot because, you know, I have to have the idea, I have to know what stitch I'm doing, I have to do a lot of work to figure out how I'm gonna make it since I don't use patterns. And I usually only crochet in the winter when I'm cold because I can, you know, have the warm yarn on my lap. But this is like my first non-winter crochet project in a very long time. But I was also thinking, you know, I'm using a lot of fall colors, and it's almost fall. It's like the beginning of fall into summer. So it's very fitting for an autumnal wedding. They're gonna have an autumnal wedding in the fall, in October. So everything's just kind of lining up. Everything's working out. Everything's doing better. And I'm in a really positive headspace with this project just in general. And I'm actually confident that I'll be able to get it done, even though when I math out the hours, it's gonna take a lot to make this. I'm still confident that I'm gonna get it done. So I think what I'm gonna do is probably take all this yarn downstairs, get my PJs out, and sit on the couch and just crochet my heart out and stress relief and enjoy it. And then when I have all my granny squares done, I'll come back and show you guys how I'm gonna join everything together. I finished all my granny squares! I purchased all the yarn on August 20th, and I finished the last granny square on 9/11. So that means it took me exactly 3 weeks to get all these squares popped out, which is perfect because that means I have a week left to join all of them together and finish the blanket. To weave in my ends, I use a smaller crochet hook than I used to crochet the stitch, and I just weave the end back and forth. I'm not sure if this is the correct way to do it, but that's the way I've always done it. So that's the way I'm gonna do it now. One down, 48 more to go. So I probably could have gotten all these ends woven in like over the last few days, but we have finally have somebody coming to fix our house after it flooded in November of 2022. It's been almost 2 years, and we've been fighting with our insurance company for almost 2 years now to just pay enough to fix it all. And we finally got set up with their contractor, and their contractor told them, yeah, it's going to cost more money than you think it's going to cost. And so they okayed it. And we had somebody come to hang drywall yesterday. So I didn't get a chance to get in here and film it because I was busy and it was loud in here because they were hanging drywall. And so I put it off for just a few days until I could get back in here and show you guys weaving in all of my ends. I probably could have just started weaving in a few and then shown you the last like block or two, but I wanted to do it all with you guys. So I waited, and now you guys get to see exactly how I'm weaving in all of my ends. This is gonna be kind of slow going. I got a lot to do here. But I did want to tell you guys that I have loved crocheting this blanket. I have loved crocheting this blanket so much that it has renewed my desire to try and make things to sell to people, which always I talk myself out of. Every single time I want to make something and sell it to people, I always talk myself out of it because people are not willing to pay the amount of money that it costs to purchase something that is homemade. I love you, sweetie. I originally thought it was going to take like 70 to 80 hours to work on this blanket, but there were a few days when I was just going and going and going, and I crocheted like 5 or 6 granny squares, which takes like 10 to 12 hours. Now I originally thought if I just sit down and crank one of these squares out, it takes a little over an hour, but less than half an hour. But when you factor in I gotta take a break to stretch my hand because it's cramping. I gotta take a break to get some water. I gotta take a break to go to the bathroom. Gotta take a break to eat. Like, in a 12-hour day, like, started crocheting at like 1 o'clock p.m., ended up crocheting at 1 o'clock a.m. It took 12 hours to make 6 squares. So then I have to factor in, do I want to make each square a billable hour and a half? Or do I want to say, no, it really takes like more time to make a square than I thought it did? Now, do I pay myself minimum wage for the blanket? Do I pay myself a reasonable $10 an hour? Or do I say, hey, this really should compete with my part-time job. This should be a reasonable wage for the state I live in. I'm a millennial, I have a mortgage, and we have too much debt to be able to have children right now. Do I charge $15 an hour? Or $20 an hour? Like, maybe, like, this is a specialty skill. Like, this is a custom blanket. Do I charge $20 an hour for something you can't get anywhere else? And I've done the market research on blankets on Etsy. Cujo, what are you doing? And if I were to sell anything handmade, I would want to sell it on Etsy, which is the go-to marketplace for handmade goods. And so I did my Etsy market research. And I determined that a king-size crochet granny square blanket goes for $500. And you might say to yourself, well, $500 sounds like a lot of money. $500 in profit sounds like a lot of money. If you actually factor in all of your Etsy fees and all of your cost of materials and break everything down. Maybe you even did an Etsy sale. A lot of people will do like 25% off for Christmas. And after all of that, if you break down your profit, which is a lot less than $500, and then you go to divide it up by an hourly wage, you're gonna realize you're making less than minimum wage with a $500 king size crochet granny square blanket. And so I went and looked at who is selling these blankets for $500. And I found a lot of third world countries. I found a lot of old women who've just been crocheting for 30 years and have so much stock they need to get rid of it. I found, oh, this is my grandma's blanket. I'm selling this stuff online for her. We're talking about someone who has a house that's paid off, has a fixed income, lives on that fixed income, and realistically doesn't need to make a proper hourly wage because this is their free time hobby, and any money they make from it is fine. I just can't compete with that. I can't charge myself minimum wage for making a blanket and selling it because I have a mortgage. I want to be able to pay off my debts. I want to be able to afford to live a reasonable lifestyle. So if I were to charge myself less than minimum wage to sell things, why would I not take an additional 100 hours in a month and tell my boss, who pays me more than minimum wage, that I'm willing to work full time? Why don't I go down to KFC, who pays $14 an hour, and tell them, hey, I'll take on another part-time job 100 hours a month and make more money than crocheting blankets and selling them? Because as much as I have loved crocheting, I don't know that it makes financial sense to crochet for a business and charge myself minimum wage, less than minimum wage. I don't think that makes financial sense with where I'm at in life. So, if I charge myself a reasonable wage to make this blanket, and I add on a design fee, because this is a custom, one-of-a-kind piece that you're not going to find anywhere else. I charge the cost to go and pick up the yarn and pick out the yarn and research the yarn and to create the pattern and to practice the pattern. Once I add all of that with a reasonable wage, I add in the sales fee, the transaction fee, add in any potential discount fee that I would want to run on the platform, add in that potential up to 15% additional fee for running an ad on Etsy. This is going to be a several $1,000 blanket. So while I was crunching the numbers, my husband asked me, how much does it cost you to make this blanket? And I told him, well, it's probably going to take close to 150 hours. I would want to charge myself $15 an hour. And on top of that, I have to account for up to 25% fees in Etsy fees. I have to account for maybe doing a 25% off sale around holidays like Christmas. And on top of that, I have to account for the materials. Now, I used all acrylic in this blanket, but if I were to spend this much money on a blanket, have a customer pay me this much money for a blanket, I would want to use better materials. I would most likely want to use cotton or bamboo because they're nicer, softer, more sustainable materials. And you also have to account for the cost of shipping, because most people, when you're at that price range, bundle in the cost of shipping with the rest of the blanket. So I told him that it would probably cost $2,000 to $3,000 to be able to make a livable wage selling this blanket. And he told me that's how much I should sell it for. Never mind all the people in third world countries and the old women in Florida with their fixed incomes. If I have to sell this blanket for $3,000 because minimum wage is not enough for me, then I need to sell this for $2,000 to $3,000. Otherwise, it makes more sense just to tell my boss I will work 40 hours a week. Now, if anybody watching this video, actually watching this video, I only expect about 100 people to actually watch the video, and according to my analytics, only about like 20 of you will actually watch this part. So, all 20 of you who are watching this part of the video, I want you to let me know, would you pay $2,000 to $3,000 for this blanket? Would you pay $4,000 to $5,000 for a nicer blanket with better materials and a more intricate design? Actually, scratch that. I've never made a crochet video on YouTube before. I normally do sewing content, which means YouTube isn't going to show this video to anyone. So I'm just talking to myself at this point. And I would say that talking about pricing and not being paid enough for your work is probably the biggest reason why I don't take commissions anymore, because I've done a lot of commission work for family, friends, coworkers, kids I went to school with, like anybody. I've done a lot of commission work for people because once they see that you can do something creative and that you are good at something creative, everybody wants a piece of that pie, and everybody wants you to be able to do it for a friends and family discount. And we all know that a friends and family discount means I want to pay for the cost of the materials and nothing else. You're gonna get a $10 bill profit as just a nice thank you for doing this for me. Now you might say, well, Christine, why don't you ask them for more? And I would just have to tell you that I have. I do ask for more. And when I go over the actual cost of everything with people and tell them how much I really should be charging them, they end up going and buying something online for like $10 that I realistically should have charged them like over $100 for. So when I do ask for more, I don't even make that $10. When I do ask for more, I get nothing because I don't get the project at all. The most profit I have ever made on any one single commission was $20. And you may make the very valid argument, hey Christine, you're making this blanket for free, you make YouTube videos for free, your channel's not even monetized. And I would say to that, just because an argument is valid does not make it persuasive. And once you put a dollar sign on your hobby, it ceases to be a hobby. Once you take compensation for a design, you have to make sure that person likes that design. You're no longer making your own hobby. Like, you're no longer making your own creative vision. You're no longer calm and relaxed when you're making it. You bring a business mindset to it because you have to, because you're making it for somebody else. And so I would say I would be willing to make my hobby into a business for the right price. But if I'm not getting paid enough to do that, then I would rather just keep my hobby as a hobby, and I'd rather enjoy making the things I'm making and then not get compensated at all, and have more freedom to make the items that I want to make and more freedom to make the projects I want to make than to be tied down by somebody else's vision and tied down by somebody else's money. So maybe I just need to have my husband run the Etsy shop, and then I can still make stuff that I want to make and have him deal with all the pricing, or make stuff that I want to make and just tell him how many hours I spent on it, and then he'll charge a reasonable price for it and not tell me how much I'm making. And not tell me, yeah, I charged people $5,000 for this thing you were only going to charge $500 for. So like, maybe there's a workaround with it there, and maybe I'll figure that out at some point. I don't know, maybe I would have to have my husband run the Etsy shop. Maybe that's what I gotta do. Maybe I should just make beautiful, fun stuff that I enjoy making and have my husband sell it for me. Maybe that's the golden solution. So I know I've already done like over 90 of these, but the last 4 are really a struggle. Oh, I don't want to do them. But I should. I should just get it over with. This is painstaking. Deep breaths. I'm going crazy. This is so much work. That's the last of them. All my ends are woven in. All 98 of them. And now it's time to rearrange some furniture because I don't have room to lay out a king-size blanket on this floor. I strategically laid out my granny squares all Sudoku style, so each row and column had one color, each color, and no 2 of the same color in each row or column. And that was a whole puzzle in and of itself, but I managed to make it work. I have to say that now more than ever, I absolutely hate the color palette of this blanket. Even though while I was crocheting all these granny squares together, I was really kind of liking them. But I think it might just be that my super fun maximalist purple rug just doesn't go with sad millennial beige. So I'm gonna join all these granny squares using this medium brown color and just hope it looks better when it's done. I basically extended my granny stitch to join all my granny squares together and kind of made a convoluted zigzaggy pattern throughout, just to like not have to have any more ends to weave in and just use one continuous yarn to join everything together. When I tried to show you guys what stitch I'm using to join my squares, I kind of screwed up and I had to undo my stitches and realign everything and redo it. And I did look up a tutorial for this part, but I had to watch it without sound because the instructions were confusing me. But once I just like looked at what she was doing, I was able to kind of match it. Why? Must you? Meow. I ended up not getting as much work done on the blanket with all the work being done on the house this weekend, but that's okay because I can just come in here after work and just crochet for a few hours. And you know, whether you spend one day working on it for 10 hours or 5 days working on it for 2 hours each, you're gonna get 10 hours of work done either way. So no matter how I break it up, as long as I just keep working, I'll get the work done eventually. Meow. What are you doing, bud? Why are you all of a sudden climbing the walls? Must you climb the walls? I also wanted to give you guys a fair review of the Mainstays Walmart brand yarn in case you've never used it before. And my final verdict is it's slightly softer, but also more likely to pill than the Red Heart yarn. So it's basically a wash. It's like $1 or $2 cheaper, but also you get a little more yardage out of it. And it's a little bit of a thinner yarn, but not enough to really notice. So if you want to mix and match your colors, you want to go for a more budget option, you like the Red Heart yarn, you like the Caron 1 pound yarn, you'll probably like the Walmart brand yarn too. It's all basically the same acrylic yarn. I feel like anytime I try to show you guys what I'm doing, I mess up. What a pain. Maybe I just need to turn the camera off and focus on my crocheting for a bit. And this blanket came together so well. I am very, very glad I crocheted it using yarn colors that I don't like, because it's a gorgeous blanket anyway. I was so close to finishing joining all these squares with one ball of the Jumbo Super Saver yarn, but I just barely ran out. So I'm going to have to use the rest of my ball of yarn from making the squares. And I was also hoping to crochet a border around the whole quilt with this yarn, but I don't know if I'll have enough. So hopefully I will. Fingers crossed. I put my border on. And I actually did the border twice because I didn't like the full granny stitch at the edge of it. I thought it was too bulky. I didn't think it looked good. So I took it apart, only one side, and did a new stitch on it. And I really hate how lumpy all of these little joining bits are. So as much as I hate taking apart my stitches, it has to be done. Did I mention I was a foot short on thread? And that if I do the math and I take apart all of my stitches, that would give me 22 stitches and 46 spacing stitches which would be plenty to make it to that corner all the way. And I just have to tell myself, it wasn't that much work. It wasn't that much work. No, it was only a few hours worth of work. I've spent probably over 100 hours on this blanket already. What's a few more hours worth of work? Tell me. Oh, it needs to be done. Alright, I should have rolled this up properly. It's going to be a tangled mess now. Hey. You come to rub it in? You come to make it a pain for me to deal with this? Come to make it even worse? Cujo. No. Stop it. You're going to destroy this blanket before I get anywhere with it. I'm gonna kick you out. Good job. Stop it! Go away! And I realize this might not look like a lot of work if you're just looking at me and thinking, oh, she wore that outfit yesterday. No, I didn't. These are my pajamas. I've been wearing these pajamas all week. The first time you saw me wearing these pajamas was at the beginning of the week. It is now the end of the week, and I've been spending a lot of time on this blanket. So yes, it was a lot of work, and it was a lot more than just the one day that wearing the same outfit makes this look like. I love unraveling my work, yes I do. I love wasting all my time, yes I do. Meow. This is gonna be the third time I crochet the border. So I redid the entire border and it looks so much better, and I'm glad I did that because this is actually a presentable border that I can gift to somebody. Now I crocheted this border using what I would have called the double hook stitch because I hooked it on both sides of the stitch. But I recently watched a crochet tutorial, and by recently I mean about a year ago, and I learned that this is called a single crochet stitch, which makes me wonder why for the past 20 years of my life I've been calling a different stitch a single crochet stitch, and I'm wondering what that stitch is actually called. So if I ever make another crochet video and use that stitch, I'm gonna ask you guys what it's called. You know, Cujo, I had a dream about you last night. I had a dream that we took you on vacation with us, and you were absolutely terrified of the airports and the hotels and the other people. Does that sound about right? Yeah. I miss you. Oh, look at you stretch. You're so long. You're the long Cujo. Little boy. And this blanket is not done once I'm done with the border. I have one more very special touch to add to this blanket. I sourced some materials from my fabric scrap stash. And my little bucket of embroidery floss that I got from my grandmother. I embroidered a very special little tag with the date of the wedding on it, so the newlywed couple will always remember their anniversary. And I probably could have made this tag better, but this is actually the first time I've ever made a tag, so I'm pretty happy with it. I'm finally done with my blanket! This was quite a project. And I know the last few videos I've made since I've started my capsule wardrobe have taken like a month to make, but that's like a month on weekends. This blanket took an entire month to crochet when I did it on weekends and every single day after work. Over the last month, from August 20th to today, September 21st, I only missed 30 days of crocheting over that entire period. That's how much time I have spent working on this blanket, and I think it was totally worth it. This is a gorgeous blanket, and I am very happy to be able to gift it to the new couple in my husband's side of the family. I feel like I really improved my crocheting skills with this project. I've never made a project this big, sewing or crocheting, like any medium. This is by far the biggest project I've ever made, and I'm really glad I tried it because it kind of helped me find my passion for crochet again. Like, I've made a few pieces over the last few years, but this one really gave me a lot of ideas just to make stuff to make, clothing, blankets, all kinds of stuff. So my next project is actually going to be crocheting a piece of clothing for my capsule wardrobe. So whether you liked this crocheting video or you've been following my capsule wardrobe series, you will love my next video. So come subscribe to my channel so we can all enjoy that next video together. Thank you guys so much for watching today. I'll see you next time.